We turn our backs, we can't help, we're gone. This is our identity.
You said the same thing I told ya. My eyes are clear, there's no secret. I wanna know, was it serious? I need it clear, my best friend. Isn't easy to show with the weight of the world on my shoulders. I know I told you, it's the best light I know. It's not a game that I am playing, my love. Trying to hold my feeling, I don't know what's right. I'll find the best way, I think that I might. I know you made it in the nick of time. I'm calling on you. I think we're made of something. I wanna find a new keeper. I like the way it's mysterious. I think I found my own way. Isn't easy to show with the weight of the world on my shoulders. I know I told you, it's the best light I know. It's not a game that I am playing. Trying to hold my feeling, I don't know what's right. I'll find the best way, I think that I might. I know you made it in the nick of time. I'm calling on you. I think we're made of something. I think we're made of something.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me, hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing in. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the sky.
Hey guys, what is up? We are back with HLTV Confirmed once again, the 8th episode this time of our beautiful little show. Thanks to all of you for joining already, and hope you'll voice your opinions and questions in the chat for this one. We're going over loads of topics, and it's going to be interesting for sure. I have my trusty panel with me, Lucas HLTV and Milan Striker, and of course from India all the way, our resident Asian Indian analyst. Bleh. How many times have you been titulated that way, huh?
I've lost count.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? There's someone in chat already saying, I hope Prof is here. Professor could not make it. He is he's at Epicenter in Moscow. So
his internet in Russia doesn't reach that far.
That's exactly it. And for those of you who remember what happened when he was back home in Croatia and his internet dropped, this is from now on the official image that we'll use when we talk about Prof. No internet in Moscow apparently. So, but thanks you guys for joining. We're gonna be talking about lots of stuff, as I said. Let's just dive right into it. I think I won't say juiciest, but at least the most interesting topic.
It is the juiciest, man.
Yeah, sure. It is juicy. Yeah, but
it is.
It's nothing new. I guess most of you guys have already seen what happened with Forsaken cheating at Extremes Land, and there's got to be the video of this has to be like viewed, I guess, thousands of times, where you see the guy actually trying to avoid the admins from looking at his PC, right? The fact that it was caught on stream at Extremes Land is just I think just adds to the whole scandal of it, that you can actually see what happens at the moment he gets caught, right? So for those of you who didn't follow it that close, he got exposed. He's cheating, and he has been for some time. A lot of people have said so. That's what we're going to be talking about here, because there was before when OpTic was picking up the squad that they ended up going with, there were actually accusations of Forsaken cheating before. But we're going to go over all that. First of all, let me ask you guys: when you saw that video, what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, first of all, obviously it's not a funny situation, but it was funny that that particular clip where he's just like trying to get the admin off the keyboard, and then he apparently deletes it like in front of the admin's eyes. Like, if that's not funny, I don't know. But I mean, obviously the whole situation is just screwed up. Like that's obviously like the worst thing you can ever do is cheat online, and just not understanding that and the gravity of it is already really bad.
Yeah, he himself had an explanation because he actually did issue, I guess, a bit of an apology through AFK Gaming, an internet-based website, and a website that also deals in interviews and coverage. He said, I didn't delete the file, but what was the actual story there? I think it popped up a virus defender or something, and then that's why I had to do something on my keyboard, as he was... The whole thing just seems so very shady, man. I gotta ask you, I guess, this gotta hurt for you, huh?
For me, like, it's kind of funny, right? So I woke up around like noon. It was a Friday. I was kind of like off from work. I didn't have work that day, so I woke up around noon. I just checked the scoreline of the first map on the scoreboard on HLTV, and I'm like, yeah, that's looking good. I went back to sleep, and my phone just starts vibrating like it just goes off, right? My phone just explodes. I'm like, what's happening over here? And then I see I see lots of messages. See my Twitter's just blowing up, and the first thing I see is the video of that happening, and immediately, I don't know why, I remember this one incident. I guess you guys might remember. I think it was in 2009 or 8 in Brazil. There's this one player called ASPX or something who was caught cheating. I think it was walling on LAN in 1.6. I'm talking about like 10 years back, where esports of CS was never the level it is right now. I just got flashbacks to that, and I'm like, holy shit, this actually happened. It was a little shocking, I won't lie. It was a little shocking, but at the same time, I mean, many things happen, right? Like, yeah, I think many people, at least in the scene over here, they went through all the 5 different stages of grief, where first it was shock, disbelief, anger, then in the end, it was just the memes. So, yeah.
So that's the last stage of what do you call it?
The 6th stage of grief is memes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, instead of acceptance, you just have memes at the end.
I think I even made one actually on my Twitter page that, like, comparing it to when your girl finds your DMs. But But Bleh, I gotta ask. So before we get into what happened before with the pickup and the maybe the signals that were already there, what's been? There's obviously been some development in the story. He issued an apology. They terminated the team. They were lost their spot in the Pro League, and the final's gonna be replayed for the Premiership fall, right? But there was also some fallout. And some anger, I take it as well. Like we were talking about that. Can you tell us a little bit about what's the community's response to this sort of like a week later?
I'm just gonna I think it's kind of subsided right now, but I'm just gonna not a rant, just gonna start from the beginning, right? I said this earlier in one earlier podcast, which I gave a couple of days back, where India as such, when it comes to esports, we really don't have anything, right? India really hasn't had anything apart from that IGC debacle, which happened 6 years back, and they needed success stories like how Ukraine is currently an esports powerhouse. That happened with Navi going around and winning so many events back in 2010 against Fnatic and all that. You need these success stories to kind of be the catalyst for a country to really become not an esports powerhouse, so to speak, but kind of elevate itself. And OpTic was that. OpTic came in, Infinite Esports, they really expanded real quickly. That's another completely different story. Right now OpTic are we probably made a mistake, but when they got this team, right, it kind of looked pretty decent. They were looking pretty good. They got YB from Germany. He was playing some tier 2, tier 3 scene in Germany, but it was a definite improvement getting him over to the lineup as a coach and then immediately into being an in-game leader. And the thing is, even if you take out Forsaken from the picture, if you added in any random fifth, the team was still playing decent Counter-Strike, some basic solid fundamentals, better CS than I've seen from almost any Indian team in the past 6 years I've been observing this particular scene, right? So there was a lot of hope. There was a lot of hope, pride, and people looking up to this team. People this team's going to go there. They're going to do some damage. They're really going to help the scene really elevate itself. And then this happens. And when that happens, obviously, people will be emotional, right? People will be angry. They'll be looking to lash out at everyone involved in putting this unknown player from wherever he started all the way to that stage in China, in Shanghai, right? So I think that's the root of all the, I wouldn't say hatred, but I would say more of anger, frustration, everything kind of spilling over because of that.
So how does that manifest itself? I know that you and also others who protected him before, or at least stood up for him, has been talked to in harsh manners. What's going on?
That's fine. So here's the thing, right? I'm sure you guys agree as well. When it comes to this player, there were a lot of suspicious clips when he first came out. He came out, I think, a couple of years back, a lot of fishy clips and whatnot. And the thing was, there was no proof, so to speak. We couldn't really there was no definitive proof. There were some very suspicious clips, but it could be kind of compared to the Rob situation, where we had people like JW, quite a few number of really big professional players who said, yeah, this guy's definitely cheating, but in the end he wound up in mouse sports. So everyone had their doubts. And then there was this incident a year back. He was actually playing in a couple of teams, and he actually performed on LAN as well. He played on LAN. Didn't play that great on LAN, but he did perform decently okay for a team called Shooting Monkeys and Semperex, I believe. And what happened was, while he was playing for that team, there came up the incident that he used to sell Steam accounts, which is obviously against Valve's TOS, right? And once that got figured out, ESIC got looped in, and the ESIC, they gave him a 2-year ban because there was one account which he owned earlier in the past which got a VAC ban. Then I think it was AFK Gaming themselves. They did an article saying, there was no proof that they did an investigative piece where they said there was no proof that account got a VAC ban when he owned it, right? That the VAC ban came later. So they presented this proof to ESIC, and ESIC reduced their ban from 2 years to 6 months. So for 6 months, it was out of the picture, it was out of the scene. Everyone was like, yeah, this guy's done and dusted. And then OpTic came into the picture. And OpTic's they spoke to So Strong, AFK Gaming, a number of other local partners, and OpTic's we want to build a team, open tryouts. We don't want to buy a team. We want to see what, they want to build a storyline of building up a team from scratch to see what they could do. He applied. And he mentioned in the statement as well, he didn't cheat at the tryouts, which is on land, right? There were about like 200 people over there. He did perform. He performed all right. He didn't even like, he wasn't even an aim star there. He just knew like his comms are pretty good. He understood the game pretty decently. He had a very good rapport with most of the players that we finally picked. And we're like, all right, he could probably be a support player, kind of a lurk sort of a thing. And that's what we were, looking to. That's the sort of player we're looking for. And I wasn't a decision maker in picking him up. The ultimate decision obviously lay with OpTic, but I do believe that OpTic were aware of his checkered past, so to speak, right? This guy actually had a ban on ESIC. He has traded accounts and whatnot. You guys want to pick him up. In the end, the decision was made and he was picked up. And then, of course, you have his confession where he stated like how he wasn't confident with his aim, blah, blah, blah. Like, literally, the easiest thing in CS is like getting your aim better, and he wasn't confident in that, which is just ridiculous in my mind. And then he joined the team, and then 3 short months later, we have this. That's kind of like a long story. Condensed.
That's kind of something that how you should approach every one of these cases, right? Because until you have some definite proof, you can't just say this guy is cheating. Like obviously you use drops as an example, and with that example, obviously people are wrong about him, and like you don't want to risk being wrong in those cases just because you're going to destroy somebody's reputation just based on a hunch. Mm-hmm. So I can completely understand you, and anybody who said like until there's proof or whatever that like that, then I'm not gonna back this up, right? I'm just gonna wait until there's some definite proof, until I'm gonna say, okay, this guy is actually cheating. So like until you do have that proof, like you can't say it. You can't just destroy somebody's reputation like that, and then so it's completely understandable that some people will protect or protected him.
Not picking him up wouldn't destroy his reputation.
No, of course not.
My question would just be if they know about his past. One thing is the VAC ban that he maybe did or didn't own, but another thing is just that you have such a massive part of the community being suspicious about whether he's cheating or not, and it's a scene that you don't really know about. I know, Bleh, that you and others were helping them out in scouting, but if you don't know a lot about the scene, you don't have the resources to actually go in. Why would you take the chance?
I mean that's the issue, right? But like all of these up and coming players are called cheaters at the start. Like you can't really not say like, oh, this guy's suspicious, whether or not there's some background or whatever it is that Forsaken had. But all of these players that are up and coming that haven't proven themselves yet are going to be called a cheater at some point. So like you can't just say, oh, this guy's suspicious, we can't bring him in. Otherwise, like a lot of these guys that just in a year or 2 years actually become a top 20 player or like close to it, like we saw in Robs' case, are going to be called cheaters at the start of their careers. So it's like you don't really have an option but to trust somebody.
And another thing really I think is also just the fact that he was playing LANs, and you kind of, once somebody's playing on LAN, you'd kind of expect him to not be cheating there.
Yeah, of course.
So when somebody finds out, okay, he was cheating on LAN and he did that before and so on and so forth, I think that's kind of what caught everybody so off guard, was the fact that it was a guy who was already playing on LAN and kind of, quote unquote proven, or somebody who had, kind of been able to a little bit get rid of that, is he a cheater, is he not a cheater thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, he's playing on LAN, and that's where he gets caught. And this kind of takes us back to the beginning of the conversation where you have that video and everybody's watching the video, and then that creates, this huge drama, like the magnitude of it just kind of goes way beyond anything else.
Yeah, I mean, people are definitely going to be a little bit more careful right now, especially, I mean, in India, especially, like people are going to be a little bit more careful about who they bring in just because of this one case. So that's definitely one way it can impair the Indian scene, just like these up and comers that could definitely be legit, just haven't really gotten a chance to prove themselves. And suddenly they're going to be called a cheater, or they're going to be called suspicious just because they're pretty good. And they just haven't shown it on, even if they showed it on LAN, but they just haven't, like, whatever. If they're young and people are going to look at this kid, and just because of what happened with Forsaken, they're going to say, oh, we're probably not going to take a chance with them.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Just to like add in one quick thing to what he said right there, right? That's the biggest bone of contention here, right, between the community and some of the people involved there. Sure, you had all the pros. Even Bent had mentioned like that guy's probably cheating. So as you guys know, there was like the Asian FPL earlier, which was on So Strong, the next thing, where he was playing, and because of the suspicious clips, I felt very trepidant. But because I had to make a decision, and we like not me alone, but we had to like talk things through. And when he spoke about it, we made a call to take him out from next, especially once he got the ESIC ban thing, right? But obviously, with no legit proof, we can't keep him away from tournaments or allow him not to play. We don't have the proof, and that's the thing. Like innocent until proven guilty, and I don't care like how many like pros or whoever says, the guy's definitely cheating, man. Like we've seen actual cases of people not being legit. Unfortunately, in this case, this guy just turned out to be a scumbag, and that's just unfortunate, right? But even for me, for example, when I saw him play on LAN, I'm like, all right, he's actually playing on LAN, he's performing, and I'm like, I just took it for granted right there. That's a fuck up on my end. I should have been like, you know what? Maybe we should still be a bit more stringent. But everyone relaxed. Everyone involved in the tournament hosting scene in the country, kind of like, all right, this guy's kind of proven, right? And like no one realized it. There were a lot of holes. There was a lack of checks and balances by almost all the stakeholders, I'd say, in the Indian scene, including OpTic India as well. And the good thing coming out from this would be the fact that things are going to change. Things are going to be much more stringent. People are going to be putting in a more tighter system for players to come up from. I do agree it's going to be really hard for newer players to come out now, at least in the country. But all things considered, I don't really think like the way people are, oh my god, this is the end of the world. I'm like, it's not. Come on, we got some pretty good memes out of it, and we're gonna see some pretty good stuff coming out from this. Like tournaments will be better. Like you'll have better cheat protection and whatnot, better anti-cheats. The admins will be more well informed. At the same time, people like OpTic India is now out. Oh my god, no one else is gonna invest. I think that's complete bullshit, because you still got to look at the size of the country. You got to still look at the scope that this country might have in the future. Maybe not in the next couple of years, maybe in the next 3 or 4 years. That's not going to stop other orgs from coming in. They're going to be like, yeah, OpTic messed up. We're not going to mess up. We're going to be coming in. I think DreamHack window is still happening. So it's not like anything's really going to change. If only people are going to be more vigilant, more aware, and all things considered, I think the scene's just going to get better over time. It's just right now, everything looks very doom and gloom, but if you look at it very objectively, I don't really think it's the case.
Like if one of the most powerful and resourceful orgs in all of esports can't make it happen for them, and they fuck up like this, wouldn't it be like if I'm a European org owner with a lot of money, and I want to go check out this scene, I'm wary of it now. I'm wary of sticking my finger in something that I can't get it out of. I mean, do you really think that there are? Is that a situation you found yourself in before? Often. A lot of people walk their dog around my house, and sometimes I have to. No, my point is that wouldn't it make sense for big orgs to be kind of protective
wary?
Themselves?
Yeah, I agree. But
can you say, okay, we're not going in here because this one guy was actually, as you said, a scumbag and cheated. Like, can you throw a whole scene? Can you throw a whole country, whatever you want to call it, under the bus because of this one mistake?
I mean, it's just like Lars and Bleh said. It's just people are going to be a little bit more wary, I guess. But it's I don't think it's a bit setback. It's probably going to affect maybe like I said before, the youngsters. Maybe like outlook in the future, just because people are going to be a little bit more worried about picking up some new kid who hasn't really shown much. So like it's probably going to be like the next couple of months a little bit of a setback, but I don't see it like you say, Lucas. I agree that I don't think people look at this as a doomsday situation.
You also just have to hate what it will mean for the entirety of the community, or the part of the community that so strongly believe and conspire to the fact that every pro is a cheater, right? I
mean, I have a friend like that. I just literally played FaZe with him yesterday, and he that's the first thing that he said, like, oh, people are cheating on LAN, and like he's always like that. that like whatever he said he sees something suspicious, he just pastes me the link and stuff. So you're definitely right. Like those people that just like are totally hell bent on like people or pros even cheating online, and then just like the whole scene being whatever conspiracy theorists and all that. It's just like those people are definitely gonna have a heyday.
Time for Dan M to make a comeback, maybe.
I
Holy
I
shit.
actually went to Vax Sucks, lost like 30 IQ points, immediately closed
Oh man.
the subreddit, and yeah, I regret that. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna have all these people, coming out, but like we were right, we told you so, and everything. And in this instance, they were right. This guy was a complete moron, right? Like, who does that? You know what really boggles my mind is, all right, this guy is one sneaky guy, whatever, and he managed to con his way into OpTic India, right? His life's set. I mean, it is temporarily. He's in a professional team under a massive brand name. He's getting paid money to play, video games in India, for crying out loud. I mean, people would kill for that, for that opportunity over here, and he decides to just cheat on LAN, for no reason. Like, he's got nothing to prove, to be very honest. So, in my opinion, it's just one dumbass kid, who had no idea about the repercussions of what would happen after he did this. And just to say that the entire scene is just going to go down the gutter because of this one guy, I don't buy it. I really don't think so.
You also have to take into consideration the situation that OpTic is in right now, right? That this massive company that has huge problems with its parent company, Infinite, and the cutbacks that they're having, and then in the middle of all this happens in a country that, in a scene that they literally just poured money into, and we're going to be the next big thing, and they kind of turned their back on OpTic, or I guess that's how they must feel, right? So disbanding the whole team, I guess made sense, and just for the fact that the brand is probably tarnished, at least OpTic India is, but also it's not weird to me that they ended up doing that if they're cutting back and they're scaling back anything they're doing globally. So the timing is just so unlucky, man.
Maybe it was the perfect excuse for OpTic to also just like, we're gonna go ahead and move away from this.
I've heard, again, this is hearsay, don't take it as a fact, but this incident happened right after like that mass firing at Infinite, right? Like the parent org who owns the investor company, whatever, that owns OpTic, and they were already like that expanded real quickly. Like, they had the OpTic Brazil female team, and they had a lot of teams in SEA, and I think in South Africa as well. I'm not too sure about that, and multiple other games as well. And they were already like coming back into their core focus, right? There are a few games, a few titles that make them big, and I think they were just looking for an opportunity to kind of like, kill OpTic India as well. But the team was looking pretty good, which is why the second this has happened, we've only seen one solitary tweet, and that came from the OpTic India Twitter handle. OpTic, like the OpTic, the org, I don't think has ever spoken anything about this. They weren't even very clear about the players getting let go, like where they fire with the let go. There's no clarity on it. The players haven't even said anything yet. I'm not too sure about that. I don't know if it's like an NDA or a gag order or whatever. They haven't even defended themselves, right? The other four players in that team. So I think it's just a culmination of like a shitty situation which just kind of like exploded because of what happened.
What's up with that anyway? Because that kind of bothered me as well. Because if this had happened in, I guess, other places, or at least if it had happened somewhere else, what wouldn't you want to distance yourself from it? I mean, the team did say, or was it like the coach or manager who said that the other players didn't know? But wouldn't you want to like solidify that if you're one of the other guys?
Yeah, you would, right? But I think the guy who said it he's the international development manager for OpTic, like the OpTic org, right? And he was with the team when they were at the event. So he did say that like the team is completely unaware, and also Forsaken himself in his apology letter, he himself stated that as well, that the team was unaware. So he did like try to help out the team. I'm not very sure if it's still working for OpTic right now. I have no idea what's happening over there. But from the higher ups at the OpTic org, it would have been like, as an org, it would be nice. It kind of feels like the rest of the players just got thrown under the bus. It's like, all right, we're out of here. Screw you guys. We're going home. And that kind of leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth.
You guys honestly believe that they didn't know?
I mean, it depends on what kind of what cheats was used, right? Sometimes they would just be, oh, that's kind of weird, but like same with the clips, right? But you never, as a teammate, you never think like, oh, this guy's cheating when it's your teammate that you've known for whatever, maybe a couple of years or at least a couple of months. Like that's not something that enters your mind easily and like that you get convinced about easily. And it's like for the whole team to know or for anybody from the team to know and not say anything. I mean, that just to me seems weird at least. Like I don't think that's the case. I do believe that they didn't know. And just look at, by the way, from the clip that where he just like throws his arms around when the admin goes to check the keyboard, right? You can see like his teammates' response. Did you see that? Like the look on his face that he had,
That's
like
a
when he
death
looked
glare.
over, like what's up? What did you say?
But the funny thing, no, I said it was a death glare.
Yeah.
But I noticed like the same clip. I've heard multiple people say, look on his face. You know, he freaking knew about it. At the same time, some people like
to me
shocked.
definitely felt like, oh shit, more like is he actually cheating? And
Yeah,
stuff
so
like that. So it's just like
that's a thing, right? Like, and unfortunately, we didn't really. I don't think there's any footage of what happened after that. Like, you know, what happened to the team after that, right? We saw only.
we just saw some pictures, right?
Yeah, that's about it. I've heard stories that the team was. I heard from people over there. You know, some of the guys I know who were at Extremesland that the team were furious at him, like so furious that the Zowie Extremesland guys, they just like told him just pack his stuff and get the hell out of there. Like they literally just took his stuff and just tossed it out because his teammate they were just baying for his blood. That's what I heard. So
I mean,
that
if it was a BYOC, just get his computer and throw it out the window, right? The old school.
He's really lucky it didn't happen in some of the smaller lands over in India. I'll be honest.
Really?
Yeah, it would have been much more worse for him.
I mean, I can't imagine like, sure, like if this happened at like some local ad here, I'd be pretty worried about the guy. Like I don't know how people would react like if they found out. Like I think there'd be some confrontation.
Yeah.
So definitely like some of the smaller lands where like people are just literally face to face and have like complete access to each other and stuff. Like I feel like that would be a really dangerous scenario for whoever actually cheated.
In any land, in any BYOC around the world.
Yeah, exactly.
What about
that's the thing.
There were actually also, I guess, hearsay or rumors that people were waiting for him at the airport in his hometown.
That's just trash talk. There's just a typical internet, you know, we're going to beat him up, blah, blah, blah. That's what people usually say, right? South Asians are a very emotional bunch of people, you know. They're like saying, I want to beat him up, but I don't think anyone really turned up. I don't think anyone even knew what time he was like flying down into. And most people didn't even know where he was going to be flying down towards. I don't think any of that actually happened.
He's only known now because he was a fucking cheater. Let's
True.
Because we talked about it so many times. Let's close out the.
Just one more thing, right? If you can.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on how we then figured out that he actually cheated at the ESL. What is it called? Premier.
Fall.
Well, basically the qualifier for the Asian Pro League, right?
Yeah.
So I'm quite surprised. Like, sure, this is a local ESL brand, not the global one, but knowing ESL and knowing their precautions against cheating, like I would have thought that they would have like disabled internet connection and just like had the players sent them their configs ahead of time, as we now know is kind of standard in the international scene and like at the event. So I'm pretty surprised that didn't happen, and I'm sure that it will.
This was
from now
run
on.
by the Indian company, right? That,
Well, yeah,
but
that's what I'm
ESL
it's
saying.
like
India, I
subcontracted by
This is
ESL or
ESL
something.
India,
So-
right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe, yeah. I think with the smaller ESL companies, I don't think they have quite the same standards as, you know, the
The main
Cologne.
ESL.
Or,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's
No,
but
I do
this
agree.
is something that will start being the case, right? Like after this.
Yes, absolutely, and I think it's a good shakeup. I think it's a good shakeup for the entire scene overall. Like I'm talking about like TOs, you know, platforms, whoever, like investors or whoever's like now looking to like invest or get into the scene or do tournaments, right? It's a big shakeup, and it's good that it's at least happening right now, right? Like what really surprises me is the fact that forget the ESL India thing. Even in Zowie, he said that he downloaded the cheats from his mail or from a Google Drive or one of those sites. And from what I know, having been to a few Chinese events, is the fact that you need a VPN to even access most of the sites, right? He just used WinRAR, he unzipped it. I mean, the guy's just a just a dumbass. But the fact that he was even allowed to do that, it just boggles my mind. Like, LAN events around Asia, I think need to really pull up their pants. Of course, I'm not talking about events which are done by like PGL or or ESL or Perfect World or some of these guys. But apart from that, there's so many other events that happen, and I think people need to be more aware. Admins and all TOs need to be more aware that if you're too lax, if you put too much of the trust in people, then it's going to be, people can take advantage of it. And I think that's the case here. It was just a case of one filthy cheater who was just given the benefit of the doubt by too many people. That's the root of the problem.
Which I also guess kind of explains or excuses a little bit why people are so hard on him, right? You need to actually focus your entire energy and rage down to that one guy, so that it becomes about him and not about the scene. That's for all of the violent threats and the hate he's getting, I guess it kind of has to be this way, because
I think it has to.
Yeah,
I think that's what I started out with, right? You have to understand that the gravity of this that's the exact worst thing you can do in Counter-Strike is to cheat, and to cheat online on top of that. So like people like letting him know that that's like really not okay, that's fucked up. I feel like that's okay. Like, sure, death threats and stuff aside, but like the normal hates, and then like make sure that you let him know that he fucked up is okay.
Yeah, PT says in chat, that's what he got for using Word. With OpenOffice, this wouldn't have happened. Rename something like an image for a Mac file on a PC, and people will never ever suspect it to be cheating. But coming back to my point before about the weight you put on his shoulders and the feelings you have for it challenging down on him, I think kind of the ESIG ruling on this was a little bit too weak, because as per their own rules, second time offense, and Bleh, you were talking about his old run-ins with them for the VAC ban, or at least his old account he alleges. Second time offenses constitute lifetime bans.
But I mean, I think,
and this is cheating anyway. So I guess
this is different though. That's what they said, right? They said that the first one was for breaking Steam's term of services of selling accounts, not for owning a VAC-ban account.
But I understand
that's
why
different.
you wouldn't like have them beside each other and wouldn't rate them the same. But if just the fact that it is a second offense, and then the worst, like you said, Striker, the worst thing you can actually do, why wouldn't you? Because from my understanding of it, a 5-year ban is the same as a lifetime ban. I guess he's going to be 28 when he comes back.
He's never playing in the scene ever
again.
Yeah,
so why wouldn't you buckle up, and just say, okay, you can't play ever in our tournaments again, because you wouldn't anyway, and then that's the signal that we're giving out.
I think it's
that's
for
the
uniformity.
thing, right? They don't want to give out the message that, like, for example, if you're 18 and you get that 5-year ban, you can come back. You're going to be 23. You're probably going to still play like at some smaller lands that are not ESIC whatever sanctioned and stuff like that. You're still probably going to keep in shape, like, and keep up with the game unless you like quit completely afterwards. But like I think they just don't want to give out the message that like cheating is going to be a lifetime ban no matter what. So like, sure, second offense and stuff, but that's a different scenario, right? That's a different case.
That's the way I saw it as well. It's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna make it a kind of like de facto lifetime ban, because it's 5 years, and 5 years in CS is a long time, but it's not an actual lifetime ban. I think that's kind of what they're playing with as well. And I also think, I mean, it shouldn't be a lifetime ban, because I think we've seen with Valve doing that, it got a lot of bad feedback from the community, having the whole lifetime thing, and like, we're never going to look at it, we're never going to make any different rulings on it. I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and so I think maybe they're just trying to say like, okay, it's bad enough to where it's going to be really long and you can't really come back, but at the same time, it's more diplomatic than perhaps the Valve, you're never doing this again kind of outlook on things.
I mean, that's like a completely different discussion about like whether you should have a lifetime ban for cheating anywhere online or online, if there's a difference in that. Because I don't think there should be a difference in online or online. I think you should send out the message that cheating, like, period, is just bad. right? So you should make that distinction between online and online. But yeah, like I said, it's a very different discussion that we'd be getting into with like whether cheating whether you should get a lifetime ban for cheating or not.
All right. We're going to be coming back to this topic, at least the aging of bans. We're going to be coming back to that a little bit later. But Lucas, if you can bring up my screen, let's actually, because we've been talking about it so many times, let's end this one with watching the actual video that everyone's been talking about. So this is what happens when after the admins find something suspicious and they go to check out Forsaken's PC.
That's their other teammate.
Yeah. The one thing that kind of rubs me is that why would the let me see. This is the guy you're talking.
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that with videos too much. Oh,
But
oh, look at that look, dude.
That's definitely like he does not know, man. Like that's not a fuck.
Yeah, so this tells you he doesn't know, or this tells you fucking man, I told you were getting caught.
It can be so many things, I think. Like it can be like the moment of realization of okay, all of the rumors were true, you know?
Yeah, I think that's what it is though.
Yeah.
So I actually heard from a guy who spoke to these players after they came back, and this is what Marzel, that's the name of the player who's sitting next to Forsaken. He was like, there was a long delay, and they have these dividers, right? Those blinds on the side of the monitor, so he wasn't really able to peer over in his monitor. And when he looks over, if you like go back a little bit in the video, it actually shows him. He sees the command window open when the admin alt taps, and that's when and then this guy just deletes it, and that's when he just starts staring at Forsaken, and he's like, "What the fuck was that, bro?"
One of my favorite parts is also that the admin seems kind of like apologizing almost to him, like, "Oh, hey, no harm done. I'm just checking out your cheats, man."
Just check out your cheats.
Like, yeah, let's him bring his arm back, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking, so if I'm an admin and I discovered it, I'm not gonna take this, but he's perfectly like diplomatic in it. And then there's the guy standing up. I guess that's the OpTic India coach.
No, he's an international development manager for OpTic. He was with the team there, kind of like a manager /
He looks kind of scary in this part. Oh man, this is gonna live. This is gonna live forever. Yeah, forever. Because you don't have this from like other cheaters who are caught. Like there were some pretty great clips from some of the online leaks that we saw, I guess, last year, right? I think some German
best
players
ever, though, right? This must be the biggest high-profile like a cheater in esports getting caught. I don't remember something this big.
Do you think it's comparable to like the Kukli thing?
Sid Kukli was really like it was big because it's freaking Kaylee, right? And the org and everything. Obviously, it's a much higher level, but that was a back
high level CS. Yeah,
but it wasn't like an admin catching you cheating on LAN, right?
That's the thing. There wasn't. That's what we said. It's like, there's not that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't know when that happened. We don't even know from Kaylee. We don't even know like whether he was banned for something on online or like where his back ban came from, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know where he cheated. So that's the problem. Like with Kaylee, you were like, oh, maybe he didn't cheat online, and like it was just a matchmaking ban or whatever. Like you can always speculate about that, but it's like here, it's like literally that moment.
So guys, you know when sometimes you'll just during the day or falling asleep, you'll think about something really cringy you did a few years back, and you can't slip your mind. Imagine how this is your legacy now. And it's all, look at how many retweets and likes this thing has got. Like this,
he was on Vox. He was on Vox. He was on like mainstream newspapers in the country. I mean, well, listen, man, he's famous. He's probably the most famous like esports personality that's ever going to come out from this country. And congratulations for a second, you piece of shit.
You were gunning for that position, weren't you, Bleh? Now he took you over.
I'm done, dude. I'm done. I'm just gonna stick to like casting like tier 2 lands.
Lucas, you'll have to do long interviews with Forsaken from now on. Bleh, you can't be used anymore. Sorry, man.
No, fly down, Lucas. Just I'll grab you. We go to his place.
We'll all go there. We'll sit down. We'll have a nice
and like
chat.
talk. and you need to open up a Word document. And
yeah, there you go.
and live stream that.
I'll
shit.
bring
That-
open office.
That'll be poetic, right?
that'd be
Probably
poetic.
banned in his home forever.
Call
right?
it HLTV confirmed. We go to India, right? That's gonna have like it's gonna be like 20,000 people watching live right there. I'm just saying, man. Just saying. It's an idea. It's an idea.
We have to find some way to untarnish your scene's reputation, Bleh. So.
I'm trying. Let's see.
Yeah. All right. So let's move from India to Russia, guys. Talk a little bit about Epicenter so far. It's not the biggest of tournaments. We haven't seen them. I think what we talked about earlier as we were doing the topics for the show, everything's kind of been as you would expect, except maybe the NIP and Vanguard match, right? So my point was why I wanted to talk about FaZe actually more specifically. They moved on, but I don't think they have yet showed us that they're out of the slump, and it's been a while now. I think one of the first shows we had, we talked about why can't these guys move on. And I think actually every time we've done a show, maybe not last week, we've talked about, okay, what's wrong with FaZe? So specifically this time, by like the smallest of margins, they actually made it through, but they haven't been convincing, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, small to margins. I think you have to look at that they beat ENCE, right, to make it through to the quarterfinals.
2-1.
Well, yeah, but I mean the other maps that was pretty convincing, honestly. Anyway, Lucas, what do you want to say?
No, I mean, I was just gonna say at this point it kind of feels like FaZe are just on autopilot, and it's just they're making they went to make changes, and it was just Nico going to take the IGL role, and then Kerrigan. What is he doing there? And I mean, it's the same things we talked about already last week and probably the week before, and for however long since the major, like what's going on. And I think at this point, there's just like probably such a bad dynamic in the team. And this is all supposition. I don't actually know it. I haven't spoken to anybody, but it just feels like that's what has to be going on. There's just a bad atmosphere in the team. Things didn't work out. They're trying to, make something happen, however, but people are probably not happy, like Nico IGL, Kerrigan doing whatever, So I mean, I think they're just gonna try and show as best they can and show up as best they can and have as deep a run as they can. But I don't think they're, at least not in the near future, going to be comfortable enough to, be a contender. And I think we saw that very clearly in the Navi game.
I mean, the thing is, what you're saying, sure, like you would think that, but when I saw them, I think it was 12-3 down on Overpass, or even 13-2, was it? The first half, when they were basically about to get eliminated, and they were just laughing. I mean, 12-3, I think it was, and they were just laughing around, or like 12-4 maybe, and they were just laughing around. It didn't seem like they were pissed or anything. That there was just like a bad atmosphere or anything. Like you're about to not eliminated, you're about to lose to Navi in a pretty big fashion, and they seem to be okay with that. So, like, sure, that's also a little bit of a problem, right? If you're okay with losing like that, but it didn't feel like from like the cameras that it affects them that much. Honestly,
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily something like, oh, we're angry now in front of the cameras and raging and whatever. I think it's more just like a mindset within the team,
maybe.
Where it's just like, okay, we don't know what to do. We're changing this, we're changing that. Things kind of work, things don't work. But I don't see them as like the hungry team that they're supposed to be, right? Like it's FaZe.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, you have to think about like whether they made the change to act because actually Kerrigan wasn't doing a good job, or whether they did it because they wanted some fresh air, right? Whether they wanted some sort of a change without actually making a lineup change. And so based on that, you have to like either say okay, if this is because Kerrigan was not doing a good job, like okay, get rid of him and just get somebody else, right? If you don't think Kerrigan is ever going to go back to in-game leading, then what is he doing there? Like that, we know he's not going to be there as like not even an average player, most likely on the roster. So he's not. Right now, he doesn't really have a place there, and so unless you kind of plan on him coming back to the role at some point, like when you figure out, okay, this is not working, Nico in-game leading is not really what we want, then sure, like he can come back to it. But they have to wake up, man, and they have to realize that very soon, because it is not working, and it's not even like you can even see in the games that it's not even just the mindset type thing. that they don't have the amount of confidence that they used to have like a year ago or whatever. But it's also that their T sides have actually looked pretty bad, and that's, I imagine, one of the reasons why they even wanted to make the change, right? Because their T sides weren't that great.
Yeah, T side is
So-
IGL side. Yeah.
That's exactly the point, right? Like you don't really call too much on CD side.
Right.
Every now and again, you maybe call something aggressive or whatever, but obviously T side is where the in-game leader has the most impact. And like, look at how they lost to Navi again on overpass in basically the same way as they did at the major, except this time I think it was like the other way around. They actually started out with the bad T side, and then at the major I think they like ended the match with it, where they had like two or three rounds as well. And so like you have to look at this and say, okay, this is not working. So either like we're gonna make a lineup change, or we're gonna go back to Kerrigan and figure out whether we can do something else to counteract this problem, because what they're doing right now is not working.
You have to figure that they're waiting for some kind of IGL to pop up and save them.
Yeah.
Because you know that they're not missing out on money, right? It's not like they don't have the resources to buy whomever they want.
Well, at the same time, like if you're FaZe, and you've spent whatever, if reports are true, you've spent somewhere around 2 million on this roster over the past couple of years, and it obviously hasn't been working out as well as people would have thought. Sure, FaZe have been considered the best team in the world for a couple of months, maybe in those 2 years, like towards the end of last year when they won like New York and D-League Premier, I think it was, like without basically like letting anybody to double digits almost. So like that was like the only point where you'd think, okay, FaZe are actually the best team in the world. But aside from that, it's been either SK or now Astralis outdoing them, and now it's even worse than that. Like they're not even a top 5 team at this point, at least by ranking, and they're not even looking like one at the moment. If you look at how they lost to G2 and NRG at New York, and now they're obviously, sure, they just lost to Navi, but they just haven't been looking that great. So like if you're FaZe, I'm not sure if you want to keep throwing money at this roster and see it not work out.
That's my
the
point.
thing is,
Yeah.
they even looked better late last season when they were playing with stand-ins. I mean, they won tournaments with Chroman and Exist, you know? So, I mean, there's just something in this constellation that's not working out, and they just need, I think, to I don't know, either figure something out different, which is what they're trying to do and is not working, or maybe at some point just make a change. But just as Yoss was saying, it's like there's just nobody on the market maybe that fits the bill, and so they just kind of have to wait it out and see, you know, when's the next shuffle going to happen, when can we pick somebody up from wherever and try to do, you know, something different to shake things up a little bit and kind of try and go back to where we were before.
I just don't understand why, like, if you had such great runs with stand-ins, and you gotta figure that it has to do with in some way both the way they do strategies, but also the way that Kerrigan was calling when they had someone else than Olaf Meister in the team. Why wouldn't you, in the slump that you're in right now, why wouldn't you want to take that chance with someone else? I mean, and I'm not only talking about exchanging Kerrigan, because there's obviously no IGL to take over, and Nico doesn't really look like he's the perfect stand-in for on the IGL. Why wouldn't you do something completely different? Like, you have so many people calling for all these up-and-coming young players that want to prove themselves and that definitely would take the money from FaZe. If you can dominate with the stand-in, why wouldn't you try and try something completely new? It infuriates me because they were looking so fresh. I remember watching them at the ECS finals in London, where they didn't go that far, they didn't go to the final, but they were just fun to watch.
That was their first event with Chroman, right?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and they were doing well.
Before they won,
and they didn't even have a day off before they flew directly to Brazil to win the event there. So, but from a viewership point of view, and when you're FaZe, this is very important. I think that it's entertaining to watch because you have all these stars. Why wouldn't you try something completely new? I mean, what'll it take? I mean, is there anyone you can point out that if it isn't a new IGL and it isn't minus Kerrigan, exactly who would it be?
I mean, who would get cut or who would go in?
Yeah, so my thought experiment is if Kerrigan is not going out, and
sure.
So
who else is going out? You're asking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, like, it has, like, sure, you say you're giving the prerequisite that it can't be Kerrigan, but like at this point, like, if they're not believing, and based on what Nico said, it doesn't
can't
look
kick
like
the Dane, man. You know that you can't kick the Dane.
Yeah, well, But based on what Nico said, I think after New York, right, that Kerrigan's not going to be in game leading for, and it didn't look like they really want him to ever come back to that role, or not in the nearest future anyway. So it has to be Kerrigan, I feel like. But I mean, if you want to look past it, like sure you can always look at Rain and how he's kind of fallen off in the past couple of maybe even half a year, even this year. Like towards the start of the year, he was maybe a top 5 player in the world, or like towards the end of last year. And like this year, he's just been lower and lower. And if you look at Guardian, that's kind of similar. Like he's had very good events and he's had like below average events, and he's just not consistent. So that's also something that you have to look at. But like Kerrigan has to be the number one suspect, I think.
Right. So no solutions, I guess. It's just
I really at this point I really don't know what FaZe could do. Like I don't think it's going to happen without a lineup change. I feel like they're not going to get out of this alone. I feel that this is not going to. That's the end of the line for me. I feel like they've just been out of it for such a long time, for several months now, that basically ever since Olaf came back, right? So like that's long enough for me to believe that this lineup is not going to cut it.
What you're saying is Santaris will happen.
And I just want to add one more thing was also like even if you take that lineup which had Croman playing and they had some pretty good runs, right? You take that lineup, you take that team and put them in right now with the form Astralis, Liquid, and Navi are in. I don't think they can replicate what it did earlier. It's a different time right now. Like the past few months has been a complete shift, and I think they had their opportunity back then to really, cement their reputations, not being the best team in the world, but being, up there. But I think the time has passed, and I agree. Something has to change, but even I don't know. Like I don't know what has to change. Like if you remove Kerrigan, put all the money in the world, like who's there? Who are you really going to pick up?
Yeah, that's the issue, right? Like,
and MSL didn't happen.
I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you to mention MSL. I was about to do it myself, and then you did it. I'm so happy. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like MSL at this point is like the only in-game leader that comes to mind. If you look past like people that are almost out of the scene, like Pronax, who seems to be kind of like in a fling with Imperial, but who knows whether that's going to be permanent or not. I'm trying to think whether there's any other in-game leader that you can look at and seriously consider. But I mean,
Crystal.
I don't. Yeah, well,
I don't know, man. Like MSL. Look, I like what he does, right? I like what he does with new players coming in and how he kind of like brings out the best in them. Like there's so many players in the Danish scene.
Would he work with these individual players though? I feel like he's very good at the team kind of team aspect and like strategic and things like that. But like having people like have their own space and stuff, that's not even based on what we heard from the North camp after he left, right? Yeah. That doesn't seem like that's something that he does.
He will only play with players who respect him, I think.
And that's the only
way.
As well.
That's the only way it would work. He has a very firm hand, and he knows what he wants. And when it doesn't work, people will hate him. But that's how he plays, right? So,
and can he really handle those personalities? Though? And we're talking about some of the biggest personalities in Counter-Strike.
Yeah, for sure.
I doubt it.
And that's the thing, and it's guys that probably don't respect that many IGLs that are going to come in and say like, hey, we're doing this now, and it's like, who are you to come and tell
basically,
me what
at this point you can just like maybe Glaive, maybe they'd respect you, Glaive, at this point.
Yeah.
But outside of that, maybe like Pollard and somebody like
that. Or maybe what they need is like a strong coach, like
maybe something like that.
A Zonic, daddy figure kind of thing.
They need a coach that doesn't stay at home when they go to big tournaments. Oh, but wait, they win when he's not there. So I don't know.
I mean, it just hasn't. To be fair, like. Talking about Robin, it doesn't feel like he has ever had any sort of real impact on the team. I'm not sure about that anyway, but maybe he was more of an analyst type thing.
My impression is that he really lifts morale. That he's mostly there for.
Yeah, I guess that's mostly what he does, because I didn't feel like he ever. Sure, like you can't really know what he's saying in for the team and stuff like that. But even in like timeouts and things, like you don't see him talk and come up with too many ideas. And
like that. In the New York interview I did with Nico, he that's basically what he said. He says Robin is more for like team atmosphere. He's good at getting everybody focused, getting everybody kind of like in the mood and making sure everything's working out all right. He's not so much of like a tactical guy. But at the same time, Nico did also say that he was hoping that Robin now would be able to help him more as he kind of jumps into this in-game
Yeah.
leader role. So I wonder how that's actually working out.
How-
It would actually be kind of nice to hear
How that
from
worked though.
Nico.
So you get in a new IGL that from my perspective doesn't really have as much say as Kerrigan does, or at least isn't that well versed in tactics, and then you expect your coach, who's not really a tactical coach, to do more.
Well, that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
even going back
Well,
to
the
what
thing
we-
is,
yeah.
apparently Kerrigan kind of likes to work on that stuff by himself, is what Nico said. So maybe that also didn't help, which is kind of like he's doing his thing, and then Robin's kind of doing another thing or whatever. But I'm sure that Robin has enough knowledge to teach somebody who maybe doesn't have that much experience, at least the kind of basics to start doing the job.
By the way, that particular part of the interview, obviously I didn't see like his response or whatever. I could only read what he wrote or what he said to you, right? But to me, that particular comment about Kerrigan liking to do stuff alone without too much external help, that seemed a little bit bitter. Like that part of the quote seemed a little bit like they didn't really appreciate how they weren't too much included in the plan and stuff like that. Maybe I'm not sure. Like this is just something that I feel like I'm reading from it.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't read it. When he said it, it was kind of pretty like straight faced, normal.
Okay.
Like there wasn't anything in his voice that would kind of give any hint of
Okay, fair
something or
enough.
something else. So you just kind of got to take it at face value and make your own conclusions.
Wasn't
I
that
guess.
also kind of a problem with Kerrigan in Astralis though? Like when he was coming up to the end basically in Astralis, and the team wanted to do something and the Kerrigan wanted to do something else, right? And that's why he got cut or he benched himself, whatever the actual situation was. Like that was kind of a similar thing, and I expect that the same sort of a problem will appear again with Kerrigan maybe. Maybe that's that, but again, like this might be something that I'm just reading from it. That's just a speculation from my side, but that's what it feels like to me. That they just don't really believe in him as a clawer anymore, and you can see that obviously from the fact that Nico has taken over leadership.
But they were a bit quicker to act on it, and that's going back to my point.
What do you mean?
They were back in Astralis. They were a big. Things happened a little bit quicker, right? And they obviously got played.
No, of course.
Actually,
they didn't really
almost
give it
exactly 2 years ago. I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday?
I'm not sure, but it's somewhere around there, yeah.
He had his 2-year anniversary that, so, and that's again going back, and I guess we can close it out with that. Just my frustrations that nothing's really going on, right? I want to see the FaZe guys explode. I want to see them win, but
we still could, I wouldn't be surprised suddenly, like, for the remainder of EPICENTER. No, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they suddenly might just, like, go off. But, yeah, it would require all these players, like, playing at an extremely high level. And even then, I don't see them taking down the likes of a Liquid. Unless it's a grand finals.
I want to give shout-outs to the chat, actually, because a lot of people are coming up with reasonable, maybe not so reasonable ideas for FaZe. Someone wants to bring in Pronax. Someone's saying
reasonable.
Well, that's what I was saying before, right? Like you can
is it reasonable?
The thing is, like Pronax obviously hasn't been a top tier game leader for what is it now? 2 years?
He's come and gone, right? Yeah.
Actually 3 years now almost. That he's left Fnatic, I think. So, like, since then, what has Pronax really done? Nothing really. So that's my issue with it, right?
I don't even think it's gonna work on Imperial, honestly.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of his place, right? He's probably like that type of a player to kind of bring up new talent.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think Imperial is actually probably not a bad fit for him because he won't have the weight of top tier players breathing down his neck, and then he'll have a bunch of people that'll listen to him because he's an IGL that has in the past done a lot. So if he can kind of adjust to where the game is and play well himself and kind of do well in that tier, which I think he could, maybe he can be actually a really good, positive influence for Imperial, especially knowing that they're kind of like a little bit wild. Not the most tamed team around. So maybe having a guy like that is good.
But that's what I'm saying, right? This is not a person that you'd want on FaZe. Like that's exactly where he belongs. Like somewhere on the tier 2, like in the up and coming teams, where he's gonna bring them up. He's probably gonna get cut in the end because that's kind of how, or like his players are gonna get poached to different directions, because that's kind of how these Hunden type people end up, that they just like always have to recycle new players.
That's the solution right there.
Exactly, like
There he
he's
is.
that kind of a person. So Pronax not really for FaZe, I think.
Oh, I meant Hunden.
Yeah, I mean that same type of situation, right?
I don't really know about that. Here comes Gatun and the dog. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Rip Frankers. Did you guys see the real dog behind the Frankers Twitch emote died a couple of months back? Yeah.
I don't even know what that emote is.
I don't know what it is.
It's the dog. It's the dog.
Oh, Frankers.
Oh,
Frankers, the real dog behind.
Now I feel bad, man.
What is that? How have we gotten to this?
Yeah,
because they spammed it in the chat on Hunden.
Maybe we should move on, huh?
It's
Yes,
bad, man.
we have to move on from this topic.
I guess so.
So past phase, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the ban wave that FPL put out recently. A lot of players, especially Swedes, actually, now that we're talking about them, got banned. There was one guy, one of them, I think, actually won FPL a few months back. I was talking to FaZe at Mikey about this. Dottie, his name Dottie.
Yeah.
He won $3,000 last month.
Wow.
So because I was talking to Mikey about this, because I wanted him to come on the show originally, actually talk about this, which he declined respectfully. But he did give me some insight as to what's going on at the moment and why
So
they're actually.
does he have to get back the money, or?
I don't know actually.
I thought that's why I wanted to talk to him as well.
No, that's a good question for sure. I didn't actually ask about that, but the reason he brought it up was that, and this is, face it, Mikey, that is that this is why the FPL is vulnerable, and that's why we're so harsh with the bans. The reason I wanted to talk about this obviously is because a Dane was involved. So just to get that out of the way, striker. There was a big ruckus with a young guy called Bro. I think he's 16 now, who was also banned in this wave after actually retweeting about the tweet about the ban that Dottie received, which is kind of funny, because he has an old Wahengbam account that he says was either sold off or lent to someone at school, or there were a bunch of different stories involved with that, and he didn't. And also something I talked to Mikey about, the I'll quote this: the appeal isn't going very well. That was his words. But the question here is, how long ago can a Wahengbam account, or how long can it be since your account got Wahengbam, even though was it your own, was it not, and that should there be some kind of aging involved?
I don't think it's so much about statute of limitations. I think it's more about the fact that he was 12 years old when that happened.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the conversation, because statute of limitations, I don't know. I
feel like there should be some, just because like it's like if it's whatever 6 years ago, and it could have been like, you don't know the circumstances of that situation, right? Yet, like, unless you're Valve and you have access to like Wahengbams and stuff and know where it happened, like you can't. I don't know. I feel like there should be some sort of a statute of limitations. But anyway, like you said, like this is more about the conversation of that he was basically a kid when this happened.
He was definitely a kid. He was like 12. I mean, I don't know. I
12
remember being 12. I wasn't, making the most rational, conscious decisions ever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he wasn't either, So I think destroying somebody's career or whatever because of something they do when they're children isn't right. Definitely, it shouldn't.
No,
and I mean, that's why every single, country in the world has,
I mean, think about it,
according to
right?
age. Yeah.
Think about like this entire Forsaken thing. Like ESIC gave him a 5-year ban for one of the most blatant over the top cheating episodes ever. And this kid, 12 years old, and like Lucas said, even I've done a lot of stupid shit when I was 12 years old, and he's what now? He's almost 16. I think it's like been 3 or 4 years, and now he's banned. I know, like face it, Mikey, he did say that it's an FPL ban. It's an exclusive league. It's a privilege to play here. It's not open for everyone. Blah blah blah. valid reasons, whatever. But for a kid like this is the main opportunity for him to really make something happen in his career, right? And it happened like almost 4 years back. So, and by the looks of it, unless Valve steps in and says, hey, you know what, it's okay, I think he can play or something like that, he's gonna never get an opportunity to play on FaZe It. On FPL or whatever, which is something that this kid has been grinding for, and like he was 12, so you can see how this looks way worse than even the Forsaken cheating saga, and that's what I think everyone's really talking about right now. Even all the pros on Twitter. I think we had Natu speak up about it, and quite a few other current pros as well.
Zonic also.
Zonic as well. He mentioned about it. Yeah, you're 12, you make mistakes, and I think it'd be great like to set precedent that sure, if you're like maybe above like 16, let's say 16 I think is a good age. Like if you're below 16, if you had a VAC ban which took place when you're below 16, maybe a Euro ban, maybe
that's actually ban. But that's my problem with setting an age limit like you'd have it in legal system and in the real world, is that people mature differently. So that's why a statute if you had a statute of limitations, that'd be a little bit better, because then that would be about the age of the actual ban and not your age.
But still, it's just like you could do it. Let's say, okay, let's go back to somebody like Frozen, right? He was 14, I think, when he kind of started being a little bit more, or even 13 actually. I think he was 13 when he won his first Czech championship, where he was basically already considered one of the best players in the region. When he was 13, he was on the best team in the country, or in Czech Republic and Slovakia, right? 13 years old, right? But imagine if he cheated at that point and got a ban then. Like I feel like you still have to have some sort of an age limit, just because like I got like in 1.6, like I cheated on a public server when I was like 11. Like when I started out with the game, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I just wanted to try it out, right? Like I would never do it in a competitive thing, but you don't have to do that to get a VAC ban. So I feel like you definitely have to set some sort of an age limit. And you're right, people mature differently. Like some people will understand this at a very young age. Some people won't. Like that's not something that you can gauge though. Like that's why you just have to set some sort of a limit and look to normal laws. And like Lucas was saying, maybe like 16 is where you have to set the limit.
People are really taking offense to your cheating, Striker.
I'm looking at the chat. My God, Striker, ban him from the majors.
Exactly.
It's a good thing we just recently had the majors.
I never got a VAC ban.
Well,
like it's
like I think Silent also was one to say, he's like, when I was a little kid, I cheated.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was just messing around in 1.6, and then when I became a little bit better and could actually play, professionally or whatever, I took it seriously. Obviously, stopped cheating, never cheated competitively or whatever, but that's kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, you're a kid, you're messing around, you're on some public server, haha, look at me, and then 4 years later you're screwed. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. No logical sense.
No. And you obviously have to also take into consideration like where that happened. Like sure, if you're maybe my example with Frozen wasn't great, just because like if he actually did it in like competitions and in like top tier kind of thing, or even like locally top tier, that would have been a little bit different than somebody doing it on a matchmaking, right? Where there are basically no stakes almost, and nothing really that's up for grabs. While if you did it in a league or something like that, it's obviously a very different scenario. So I feel like that's also something that should be taken into consideration. Like sure, you're kind of brought up in CS with like never cheat, because that's like everybody sees that as the worst thing, as I said previously. But still, if you do something like that in a public and you get VAC banned for that, I feel like you should never, like that should never have like serious implications on your career.
But it's something that I talked to Mikey about, and that I also think kind of bears some weight, is that one thing is the distinction between the legal society and the FPL. It's obviously two different things, but also that it's actually the rules are set by the players in the FPL. It's a community. It's a hub, right? And they actually do vote. Apparently, they have a pretty rigid voting system for these rules, and it was set up like this because that's the rule they wanted to have. And you can never ever have cheated on any account, because in that way we have there's some gatekeeping involved. You can be entirely sure that no one will get in, and then you I guess kind of sacrifice some of these young guys who fucked up when they were really young. But then at least you have some kind of limit, and you won't ever play with cheaters. I mean, considering, or at least taking into account that FaZe will actually catch them.
Yeah.
So my point is, we had so many pros come out defending him and saying this can't be right. Oh, so you have to go to FaZe and say this is not what we want. Call a vote about this shit.
Which is fair enough. I mean, rules are, eventually you realize sometimes some rules can be outdated, or you realize it wasn't really well thought of, and they can easily go back and change it, right? So I think if, and many of these pros who spoke up are people who are involved in FPL as well, so maybe they can talk about it and probably try and fix this, right? It's not fair. And also, I kind of find it funny as well, like how many people seem to be very confused as to unban swag and steal, but why do they have a lifetime ban while for example Forsaken, all these guys have like 2 or 3 year bans, right? And I think that's the root cause here as well. Valve just don't give a shit. If only they made out certain statements as to if a VAC ban which happened when a person was really young, or a statute of limitation, or something of that nature, they came up with some encompassing rule, I don't think most TOs would have any issue applying that on their platform or their tournaments. And I think that's a problem. Everyone coming up with their own reasoning for bans, and just messy situation overall.
So there's also, now you're talking about Valve, some people are calling for them to be the decisive factor in all these cases, including in interfering with the FPL. Random Rambo put out a tweet that was pasted in the chat. We're in a transition period from where anything you did online didn't have repercussion, and slowly moving into a new period where you'll be held accountable for actions done in the past and present. Valve needs to be the judge here.
But they can't at the same time.
Yeah.
They should, but I don't think they're gonna ever be involved with this.
Well, yeah, exactly. In an ideal world, they would be, but we know Valve, and we've seen how they work, and that's just
And do you really expect all the TOs we have, like the Straw Ladders, like ESL DreamHack and the MTG brand,
to agree on something?
FaceIt, E-League, do you really think they're gonna agree on something like this? I think
that's
so.
That's why you have something like the ESIC in place, right? The SIC.
But the thing with ESIC also is, too many MTG companies there. This ESL, this DreamHack, right?
That's what I was worried about a little bit, because I don't know exactly what the background of that company is, but sure, like something like that, something around that basis, would be the solution, right? Some sort of a governing body that would. We're getting into WISA stuff and things like that, but whatever. Something like that would obviously.
You'd never have something that didn't lean in one way or the other.
It just blows my mind that Forsaken, sure, he can play for the minors for the ESL, the one Katowice, but the next major, if it's not being done by DreamHack or ESL, technically, he can play for that major.
Who can?
Forsaken.
Oh, Forsaken.
Think about it.
Because it's not sanctioned by ASIC.
Yeah,
yes, and this kid who's 15 years old who made a mistake like when he was freaking 12 can't play a major or a minor anymore, according to current rules. As long as if FaZe gives a proof, and FaZe seemed to be very convinced that this account was owned by him, which got a backban, and they provided proof to Valve, and it is indeed correct, then he can't play it. Well, Forsaken technically can. I mean, how fucked is that?
Yeah, I think one thing you have to take into account also here is that he's 16 now, and he was even younger before, but that doesn't mean that he's, I'm going to say this outright, is all the way matured now. Just going off the way he's been trying to explain himself, he's had 3 different stories, and none of them are really. He did the classic thing where he said, okay, so it wasn't me, but if I had known there was suspicion, maybe I'd have tried to get login details from the guy I lent it or sold it to, and then try to hide it more. And I'm not kidding, that's what he actually said.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody's saying this kid is, legit or whatever. I think everybody's just trying to say okay, if you're going off of a 4-year-old ban, that's a problem. But I mean, if you can't explain yourself properly and your story doesn't, I guess there's also a reason to uphold it, that you won't have him in your league if you can't even appeal properly.
I mean, he's also what is he now, 16?
Yeah.
Or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And it's not like
He's
he's
still
a
a
mature.
kid.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
Yeah.
like he's a mature person who's going to be able to
Yeah.
deal with this kind of pressure easily, right? So I think you have to take that into consideration as well. He might also like he was 12 years old. Maybe he's got his facts mixed up with something. Like you can't really know in these type of in these scenarios like this. This is still a kid we're dealing with. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration.
Right, to close this one out, Vacant has the best solution for all of this. People who cheat should be deported to Siberia and forced to play with a controller until the ban expires. In parentheses, plus 20 years.
I'm okay with that.
Hey, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked in Russia, right? Sending people to
Yeah.
the gulags.
Let's do it.
They'll never do it
gulag.
again. This is for you, Face It, Mikey. If you're listening in, you could do this. Sending 16-year-old kids to the gulag. Anyway, on the topic of young people, let's make this one a quick one because we don't have that much time. Our good friend Prof, who actually Professor actually tweeted at us. I think he was kind of mad that we were bullying him. He's been tweeting at us for using the image, I guess, of the Wi-Fi picture. Sorry, Prof. We'd have you in if you wanted to, if you could. Not how it works, though.
Yeah, it's not about wanting to, I think.
You don't think so?
No, apparently
Lucas then replied with a GIF saying no Wi-Fi, then bye-bye.
Yeah. His Wi-Fi falls off even when he's home in Croatia, so I don't think if we were to take that all the way, then he shouldn't be on anyway. Anyway, so
Russia, Croatia.
Yeah, whatever.
Czech
Just the guy
Republic.
from the Czech
Czech.
Republic. So, Prof was talking to Jonta, right? Who from Hellraisers, who was talking a little bit about how the team couldn't kind of stay on top after the kind of impressive major result. I'm struggling to find it right now, but the headline was something along the lines of, we're dealing with very young people who aren't very privy to the being athletes in a professional realm, right? Mm-hmm. And this is something that I also heard from Cadian when I was interviewing him before the major, that one of the reasons why his career was so long and that he's only now finding his footing is that because he was too quickly becoming complacent. So this something I want to put to you guys. Do you think that young players who are maybe very talented are too quick to get like two or three good results and then having a hard time struggling to keep up with it?
I mean, I guess it depends on the person, right? On a person's personality, just because like you're gonna have people who get a little bit too much of an ego based on like getting up to whatever, like the top 30 in HLTV at one point or something like that, and then just like being satisfied with that, or just like thinking that you've actually achieved something when that doesn't really necessarily is the case. Well, that isn't necessarily the case. So that's one thing you have to look at in these kids, because they will be a little bit more privy to, not privy, but that they're going to be prone to getting that kind of an ego, just because they haven't really matured enough yet to kind of deal with that, with everybody saying how good they are and stuff like that. So some of these kids could really have that problem.
The actual quote of the Jonta interview, sorry to interrupt, just to put it in perspective, is it's an issue for people, especially in esports, that we deal with young guys who aren't athletes in terms of understanding professionalism. They're not going through sports school, then the next stage, then the next stage until you get to the club. He's talking about sports here. And because they don't have the process, their mental and psychology part is a bit different. So that's kind of what we're going off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ties in exactly with what Striker was saying, which is it's like who comes out of nowhere, who's very talented, makes a good result somewhere, goes up to FPL or, is top 30 in the ranking for, a couple weeks or whatever. And then they start to think like, oh, I'm hot shit. And then quickly they come to the realization that they aren't once things don't go their way. And I think we see that fairly often. And you can see it also at the lower levels. I think if you just look in Spain, there's a couple of young players who kind of were coming up hot, and they were playing in the top Spanish league and got signed to some of the best teams, and then all of a sudden they drop off and they're not playing in any team, or they're benched, or they're whatever. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but sometimes it is kind of that ego thing, or that kind of I'm so good that I'm always going to have a team, or I'm always going to whatever, somebody's always going to want me. And that's not necessarily true. On the other side, there's also, for example, like if we can bring up maybe Sergey,
Yeah.
he had like a lot of motivation issues. Like at some point he didn't even want to play CS, because he was like unhappy with his team or whatever. When he was like super hot prospect and he was like starting to be seen by people and so on. So I think there's kind of a lot of things that young players go through. I think there's a lot of pressures. I think there's a lot of like also the ego thing, especially, if it's some people who maybe haven't had a lot of things go their way in their lives. It's easy to kind of fall into this like, oh, I'm so good at this, I'm hot shit, whatever. And there's nobody there. There's no like figure to say,
aren't.
like you really aren't, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they kind of just go through life kind of like, oh yeah, this is awesome, blah blah blah, until they at some point hit a wall, and then they start to have to humble themselves. And if you want to take it to like the next level, you can even say it with Simple, right? Like he was like really kind of bad manner, like always pushing everybody, even his own teammates. And you talk to him now and it's like a kind of very different person who
That's
kind
a huge turnaround, by the way. Holy shit.
It is. It's
Like,
it's absolutely amazing.
Simple now compared to Simple 3 years ago is fucking insane, man. Like that has to be the biggest turnaround ever.
Yeah, I think so as well. But I think at some point he kind of realized like, okay, I can't keep acting like this. Like if I really want to become the best, and if I really want to make a difference, and if I really want to become like the standard by which you measure other players, then I can't be like this, and I have to become a more rounded human being as well as just a very good player.
Yeah.
And I think once he noticed that, he started working on himself, and obviously now we have a very different Simple. And I think a lot of the younger players are kind of still in the hashtag old Simple in life, and they just at some point they're going to have to make the change, the same change that he made.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot about mentorship. I feel like I definitely agree with that. Like you have to have somebody there who's just going to keep you on track, not necessarily bring you down whenever you think you're hot shit. It's kind of important for you to have an ego in Counter-Strike and to kind of think you're better than everybody else, but you obviously have to work at it and kind of hone that skill instead of just like being happy with where you are. That's the biggest problem, right?
I mean, I think an example now that you're talking about Opus is actually Smooya, right? The guy today had to retract the tweet he did. It was actually directed to Simple, because apparently some guy was shooting at the hotel they're staying at in Moscow, and I think he deleted this. Yeah,
okay.
someone was shooting at the hotel, which is in itself is pretty crazy. Yeah. And then I think what he tweeted at it was, "That was me. Keep on trash talking." Which to me, okay, I can see why people will find that pretty insensitive.
I
but
don't know, man.
But for mostly just wasn't funny, right? But to me, that actually, just to say, he reminds me a bit of that. Like if he didn't have GG.bet, like if you'd just turn him loose, I think it would be much worse.
I think the thing with Smooya though is he's kind of harmless.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same. He's just kind of like a goofy kid who says like the first thing that goes through his mind. I don't see him as like, somebody really who's trying to mess with people or who's really arrogant or anything. He is what he is. Like he has no mask, no filter, no nothing.
Yeah, that's the thing. He just doesn't really have a filter.
Yeah, and so, but I don't see him as somebody who's really like, I don't know how to say. I don't even know how to explain it. He's just not somebody who's like trying to impose or trying to be mean or I mean, even if we go back and we look at like the Star Series thing with like Christian whatever, I honestly think that Smooya was not trying to troll. He was not trying to mess with them. He was just being like this goofy little kid who's all of a sudden playing CS at this level, and he just finds himself there, and he hasn't changed. Like that's the same conversation he would probably have in like FPL match or whatever, and he was just having it, in a tournament.
You're saying it's not really an ego thing, but more of a.
I really don't think it is. No. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, man. He was talking about sometimes that the games would be easy against people, right? That some of the times they were shocked
that's
when they
fine.
didn't win.
Yeah, I mean
That's
that's
okay.
Yeah, but
like,
I think he
That's
believes
okay.
it too. Like
Yeah.
I don't think
Yes,
he's.
so it's not a sash. It's not a veil. That's what you said.
well, it's still, I guess it's, I mean, the guy is just weird, right? About
But
like ego
The
and
thing
stuff,
is,
because
he'll go on both sides, and that's
Yeah,
the thing. He'll say
exactly.
like, "I think this is going to be super easy," and then he's like, "Oh, I think this is going to be super hard," or "Oh, I did it because I'm so good." "Oh, I'm such a noob." Like he
Yeah,
goes on both
exactly.
sides, and
That's
he
what I
just
was about
says
to say.
whatever. Like, and he goes good and bad, and he says it about himself and about other people. And it's not like he's trying to poke at somebody or make himself bigger or whatever.
I mean, the guy is what, 18, 19?
18.
Something,
he's
yeah,
18,
something like that, right? Like we said, like he's still a kid. Like I think most of us, like, we tend to forget like how some of these guys who are these prodigies coming out in Counter-Strike right now, they are so young. Like when I was 19, like no one could shut me up. I got in a lot of trouble because of that as well. Like till I was
Talk to us
21.
about that.
Like,
I can imagine you being like that, man, being the trouble kid, you know.
yeah, I was that asshat, right? Just running my mouth off, getting into all sorts of fights and whatnot. And I get it. Like these kids suddenly being thrust into the public. There's so much pressure. Like people watching every move this, and some of them handle it well. Some of them just keep very quiet. Some of them are a little bit more loud, so to speak. Smuya, maybe that's how he handles his thing. He tries to be goofy, he tries to trash talk a little bit the way he is, and I personally feel it's just kind of like looking too much into that right now. And also it comes like I think it was Lucas who mentioned that it's also a lack of mentorship, right? If you look at many of the teams coming out right now, until you prove yourself, you're not going to get picked up by an older team or a team that contains a mentor like figure, like Big, for example. They have GG.bet, right? FaZe, you have much more older players over there. You have all these guys, but you're not gonna, as a new player, not gonna jump into a team like that. You're gonna be amongst players of your same age or that particular age group, and that's obviously you're not gonna have that mental maturity as to how to be, right? And yeah, I think that's just the way it is. I don't think we need to really crucify them. They're still kids. Okay.
And I think to make this a little bit.
Yeah, go on, Lucas.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just saying, just to make this a little bit kind of like tie into the conversation we were having earlier about Imperial and Pronax. I think what we're talking about now is exactly why I think he may be a good fit for guys like Esperanto or
for sure,
yeah.
Because he feels exactly like that type of a player who kind of needs a little bit like a little bit of a leash, like in terms of like emotions and things like that. So like I 100% agree. That's exactly those type of players. Maybe these are not really lazy. We're more getting into the conversation of like attitude and stuff like that, which is obviously different. I mean, attitude as in like in the negative sense, rather than attitude as generally. But like in terms of lazy players, that's kind of about mentorship as well, but it's more about the ego as well.
This made me think about what I was doing when I was when I was this age. I remember I was playing soccer or football at a pretty high level back when I was probably 17. And I remember we were out playing some of our big rivals, and they had their friends put up on the stands to shout obscenities at me, mostly because my hair is red. You've all heard the words for that. And I remember my response to it was just turning around and mooning them for like an entire half. And that's how I handled it. This was my ego confidence play.
So they get even a better shot into
the paleness of my being.
Yeah.
Or no, but the point is, I think just it makes me think about what you guys are talking about. Imagine that was what you're doing in Kiev, right? When you're
So we are running up to someone and just mooning him like, kiss this ass.
I think there are some players on mouse who probably could blind some people with their butts. Yeah. Anyway,
well, Alan did show us balls.
Too much talking about butts on this show right now. And not only mine. Okay, so anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so but I did want to say, do you guys think that there is actually kind of this like lazy teenager thing? Because I mean, I can kind of see it. Like you see certain teams do it or whatever, but I don't think it's like a thing or like I feel like that ego part of it, where they just start thinking like they're hot shit, like you said, or like we talked about, like that's definitely a thing.
like that happens to a lot of youngsters. I feel like, especially like whatever, especially those emotional ones and stuff.
But the thing is, you can have that and still be a hard worker, right? And you can still, you know,
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a consistent player or
But
whatever.
I mean, you're a little bit, like I said before, like when you're that young, maybe like when you're 15, 16, maybe you're a little bit more prone to complacency in that way. I feel like
I know that
before you kind of realize how
Yeah.
like how hard
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to work for things and stuff like that.
I remember talking to Mekisk about this when we were doing interviews, and also before I joined HLTV. This was something that he talks about a lot, actually, because he was definitely feeling this way, especially since he came in really quickly and they won the Epicenter 16, was it? Dignitas, and I think he definitely felt the same. Like, this was such a big result for a very young team, and he'd only been playing for like a year, and then they had the big club in Denmark picking them up, FC Copenhagen with North, and I think it definitely played a big factor in why that didn't work out for him as well.
By the way, what kind of a I'm not sure if you can see the feedback right now, but I just this was not even planned. I have the CS:GO cup with me, like I have coffee in it.
That's your whole life, right?
Yes, exactly.
This is
Not planned at all, like not whatsoever. I just realized it now.
There was also someone saying that Bleh made his bet just to be on the podcast. For those of you who didn't know, he was actually a little bit late, so I don't think that's
Maybe he was late because he was making his bed.
right.
Maybe.
Right.
Like, is he
so-
frozen right now? Bleh.
Sorry.
I think Bleh is
Yeah,
frozen.
he froze.
Oh,
Are you with us still all the way from Bangalore, Bleh?
Can you guys hear me?
Are you
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah,
you
yeah,
fine. It's
yeah.
just
Are you-
your screen,
Are you opening Word Exa?
your webcam.
Yeah, maybe. Or PowerPoint, maybe. Camera seems to be working.
Yeah, it's fine.
Here we
It's
go.
fine.
Here we go.
I'm
Okay.
back.
So moving
you go.
on, guys. Let's talk a little bit about the most boringest of Counter Strikes, namely the online CS. I can say to you guys, I haven't seen a single match in
I haven't
EPL.
either.
Yeah,
haven't
definitely
seen
spam chat resident sleeper right now.
Did any of you watch a single match of EPL
No.
or ECS?
No.
Nothing?
None.
No.
No, I did watch one.
Actually-
I did watch one.
Yeah.
Astralis versus Fnatic, because I'm a Fnatic fan. Boy.
I think the last match I watched online was like when Snacks joined Mousesports.
I watched when North were
While
playing
back.
for the first time with
Oh yeah,
KDM,
because that was OpTic, right?
actually.
We're playing against
Yeah.
OpTic, I believe.
I vaguely remember the game. That's like the only game that I watched just because I was curious about the new North and a little bit about how they were gonna look. But that's basically the only reason I'd watch online CS, is just to get like a
See a new lineup.
decent idea
Yeah.
of new
Yeah,
teams.
exactly. Yeah, that's
Like that's
really
the
the
only reason for me
Yeah.
to watch online CS.
I mean,
I
look
mean,
at
I'd
them-
rather
okay.
watch like the Filipino WSG regional
Yeah,
qualifiers that are going
that's
on.
that's
than,
that's
like, an
100%
EPL
true.
match.
Just about
But-
something new, right? You just get something that you haven't seen before and stuff. But like seeing these top tier teams like play whatever 4 times against each other in ECS and EPL, especially now that the two are basically running at the same time,
They are.
the whole thing.
And how many
So-
events do we also have, right? The LAN
Yeah.
events happening.
On the
Like
side,
literally every week is a decent. Sure, Starlighter wasn't exactly tier one, but he still had some good teams. And now we have Epicenter. Like every week is a good LAN. I want those like 2-3 days of like a breather where I could just like recuperate and then get back to watching those LANs. I don't want to watch this online game. To be very honest.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you watch like the same refried stuff after day, and it's terrible for teams. Like since New York, like both New York and in Kiev at Star Series, every time I talk to a player or a team or whoever, anything related, like, oh yeah, we have to go back home now, and we have like 3 days to play like 25 maps, and then we have to travel again.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that even? Like, you're gonna play like 20 maps in like 4 days. What good can come out of this? Like there's no, and then rushing to another LAN, and then you get out of that LAN, and then you have 3 more days to play 20 more maps, and then the season's over. So
Yeah.
like you played 155 maps in 7 days. Like what even is that? That makes absolutely no sense to me.
Plus
I
the
had
team-
the exact same experience with people from I remember just running into Maus after they went out of the major, and they were just saying something like they're gonna take a couple of days off, and then basically like online season starts, and they have to have like 30 matches in 10 days or something like that. So that's exactly the same experience that I had when I was talking to teams at the major. So, and that was even like 2 weeks before the online season actually started. So like I definitely feel with them. just because right now, especially now that they've kind of combined because of the major being kind of taking up a lot of the start of the new season, basically taking up almost a month of it. And so like the online season couldn't start until almost over a month later than it normally would have, which would have been
it's
like
shorter
mid-August,
season,
right?
Yeah.
Mid-August is where we normally started, and now it's like it's crammed into a month and something, I think it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
like
a little over a
that's
month.
crazy, man. That's like so much that the teams have to play. And I can't see how viewership will be good with this kind of frequency. I'm just trying to read while I'm talking. I'm not very good at multitasking.
Yeah. So just now that it's brought up on the screen, this is Roger, the coach of OpTic. The online season needs to evolve and adapt. It's a shit show of scheduling matches between tournaments and practice. Availability in a short window of time trumps common sense and unique matchups. There is just nothing special in these seasons anymore, just a load of matches. I think kind of sums it up, right?
Yeah, I
mean, you have to look at it from both sides of the argument, which is obviously the organizers. In this case, BCS, well, FaZe and ESL, right? Like those two tournaments, the finals are two of the most prized tournaments of the year, alongside the League Premier and the majors, obviously. So those basically like something like 6 events a year. Those are like the biggest. So like imagine if there was no online CS, I imagine the prize money would not be the same. So you have to think about that as well. Just if you want to, how much do you want to sacrifice? But I'm sure I'm actually not sure how to fix this with like keeping the amount of broadcast that these organizers actually get to advertise their sponsors and stuff like that, which is obviously why they're doing it.
Yeah,
why
it's a cash cow.
online.
And it's easy, right? I mean, you're in your home, like nobody has to pay for anything. Like they just have like a few casters.
Like 100%.
I mean, obvious. Yeah.
And why sponsors like it as well. Like obviously, there's just not that much that they have to pour into it to kind of get some returns on it. Like you say, it's very convenient. Nobody has to travel anywhere. There's very little outside of casters, basically, and then like the whole broadcast. You don't really have any other expenses. So it all makes a lot of sense. So. And it is very good for the organizers, which in turn makes it pretty good for the scene as well.
But you'd also have to take into account that if this is actually oversaturating or that enough people like us get tired of it, then it's...
I mean, if you don't watch anything, you can't really get tired of it, right?
No. Yeah, well, my point is that if we go down the route that says this could like impair the scene because of the oversaturation that's already there, then won't it be bad for the TOs in the long run?
Well, maybe
because they already
this
do.
Is obviously going to evolve.
It could,
because like we keep seeing more and more teams kind of complaining about this, and I don't think this is going to be any different until basically the teams say. I think YNK put it pretty well. If you have that tweet up as well, which is I think a response to this, wasn't it?
Oh, right.
I kind of feel like it's also kind of like a war of attrition between ECS and ESL saying who's going to blink first, and that's finally one of them is going to be like, all right, we're out of this. We can't like sustain with this because obviously the sponsors are not going to be happy with the viewership and all that. And then finally one of them is going to remain standing, and they're going to be like, all right, now we're the sole league right now, and then things will kind of we'll at least have a semblance of normalcy, right? But the question is,
at the same time, that kind of gives itself to creating an exclusive league, right? Which is also something that I'm not sure we necessarily want.
No.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, right? Like we technically don't want one of these organizers to pull out of it, pull out of the race and just leave the other one to basically create the exactly to have no competition in that kind of area. So it's just a very complicated subject, honestly. Like
so necessary evil kind of thing. Or
exactly. It's
not kind of evil, but like annoyance, I'd say.
Yeah, it is a bit of. I mean, it's just like it is a bit of an evil, just because teams obviously don't take this seriously, not even close to as seriously as they do the.
I mean, but they all love going to the finals. The big, the big prize pool and so on. They love that part of it.
That's why we get these prize pools, because it's preceded by this fairly long online season, and that's why we have these prize pools. Why it's such a big tournament. So that's the necessary evil. We kind of have to accept it.
How about this then? We had the tweet up a couple of times, but just wanted to focus on this because this is FaZe's own observer, Sliggy, the guy who did the entire majors. Actually, pretty good work by that guy. But he says, can they just come to an agreement and have one season each per year at separate times?
Well, yeah, if
This is
organizers
so-
could ever
If you're
come to
an
an agreement.
employee, is gonna say that.
This is so funny that this is the wrong guy, right?
It's a little bit. I mean, it's not necessarily their own guy, is it?
No,
He
yeah,
is, yeah, he
works
is.
for
He's a
FaZe. He works
FaZe
for FaZe.
observer, yeah.
Is he affiliated with FaZe though? Like, or
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
just freelance that
I
Go
don't
does?
know. I don't know about that, but I
I'm
do
pretty-
believe he does all the
I'm
CS
pretty
games.
sure he is, yeah. I'm pretty sure he does all of the ECS online, offline,
Freelance.
blah, blah.
Oh, okay. I guess
Pretty
yeah,
sure.
he's kind of. I guess he's freelance.
He's affiliated, yeah. And then
But-
you have some takes going off of this, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
but
the- I
then he
like the-
has like an ECS league in there as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we could go back to, obviously it's not sustainable for these orgs, for like FaceIt nor for ESL, but I really liked what E-League did. I think that's the way it should go. Like, weekly, like not like a tournament sort of thing, but get some teams in, make the brackets that way, have a LAN sort of thing, like have something at stake, and I think that would be great. But obviously it is not sustainable right now. But eventually I see a time when the top pro league in Counter-Strike would come down to it being a LAN. It would be a part of the yearly, events taking place. It just wouldn't be some random game that team just played just to qualify for the LAN event, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be great. I really did enjoy the way E-League did it. Like if I getting like 4 teams per week or something like that. I forget.
That was also a bit of a problem just because of clashes, right? We had just had a little bit too many weekends being taken up, and that a lot of the time they just collided.
Yeah, because
So,
because EPL and ECS was happening at the same time.
Yeah.
E-League was happening. Yeah, that was a clusterfuck.
Yeah, exactly. So and also it was a little bit confusing in terms of the flow of the tournament, right? Like next week you suddenly had a Group B, and you're just trying to think about what happened in Group A. So I feel like the flow of the tournament wasn't really there. We're just waiting for the playoffs to kind of get an actual tournament. So I'm not. I was a little bit off for me, that kind of a format, and obviously it just created a whole lot of other issues with teams having to go back and forth or stay in Atlanta for a month straight or something.
So replying to Sliggy here is our good friend Scoots. He says, I've talked to both leagues for 2 years now about sharing and splitting the year to be better for the fans, players, etc. Maybe the key is HLTV not using them for any ranking points. When teams would just drop on us, then it's just one LAN they miss out on.
I mean, the online CS affects the ranking just very, very slightly.
yeah, it barely affects
So
anything.
it's not like, sure, if you do very well online against very good teams, like it's going to affect some, but it's more about the teams down the lower end of the spectrum where it gets affected a lot, because like in the top 20 to 30, just a few points kind of separate those teams. So for those teams, they actually make some kind of a difference, but not for the top tier. So that's ranking wise. I feel like that doesn't make any real difference.
And I don't see us kind of going in making changes to affect which organizer can have and who can't, right? It's probably not going to happen. And then there was the point you were talking about.
The Wahengbam tweet, I feel like, that's exactly it. Like, it's up to the teams to start pulling out of these leagues depending on like whatever they prefer, and then that creates the problem of like there's probably just one TO is gonna win that race, right? So that's a problem as well for us. We don't really want one organizer to have that much power.
Pretty much
well.
a catch-22 right now, but yeah, let's see. It's a catch-22, right? Like we don't want it, but at the same time, one tier remains, and the entire exclusivity thing comes into place, and we all know what that can lead to. Overwatch. So let's not go there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
definitely.
I'm not a huge fan of the leagues, but it's just like something
Just
that we
leagues
have to
in
live
general, man.
Yeah.
Like CS is like tennis. I always say that. Like ATP Pro Tour, you have all your stops. That's the way it should be.
with. Yeah,
CS,
that.
CS
Yeah.
is it's a LAN game. Like you have to be there. You have to be live. All of the bullets have to register. And if you can shut at your opponent, even better.
And get your Word document out as well.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just like the leagues, even themselves, if you think about the format, like the individual games really don't mean anything. And it's just like only like 5 together actually start meaning something until you get to the end where actually like the last wins or the last losses actually determine something. So it's just like there is no excitement in it. That's the problem. Just the none of the games have anything to offer really. The individual games,
True.
I mean. So that's the biggest problem with the leagues.
But you
But
have
at the
a-
same time, some people just try to watch it just because they like the teams or whatever. They just want to watch their favorite team. So I get that point of view. But like I feel like once we get to a point where CS is truly sustainable, where we don't need the online CS, like that's just gonna go away because of teams just not wanting to spend this amount of time into like playing outside of the lens. So like when we get a little bit more money into CS and when CS takes the next level, if it does, then this is gonna go away kind of on its own because of teams realizing, oh, this is not worth it anymore. Like we're playing way too much and it's just sacrificing other things for us to be able to play this. So that's how we get out of this basically. Like we had CS:GO as a whole has to evolve to that point.
I think I have two big qualms with online CS apart from it being kind of boring and repetitive. Is one, it's very hard to get guests on the show during the week when
True.
when the leagues are running. So please, teams next season skip them so you can have your players be on the show. And then two, you guys
Bleh is just smiling as if no, I want to be. I want to.
Yeah.
I wanna stay
Online
here.
CS is great, guys.
All right, what do you want to say? Yes.
the second part is that you guys screwed me over last week by betting my money on online CS.
You know what? What goes around comes around. You did it to me with Lucas before, so.
So for those of you who don't know, we do a betting segment each week. We go to GG.bet and check out all the great odds that they have, and then try to rank up some money. We each started with 100 euros. 1,000? Oh, 100. That would make everything more impressive. Yeah, 1,000 euros.
If we whatever.
back at episode 1, so it was 2 months ago. And this is how it's been going for us. Prof isn't here right now, obviously. Lucas will let you bet with his money, because that's how it goes.
Sorry, buddy.
If you see my red thingy here, tiny red thingy here, that's pointing ever so sadly downwards. That's because I'm wasting my money. But I will say that the latest one is on you guys, because you had Joe Cardoli on Tolkien Fanatic who bet. I kid you not. I think he had 8 matches.
210 or something?
It was 310.
310
odds
even.
310 multiplier, and he was betting on 8 different matchups in the
North America.
EPL NA.
NA, North American EPL.
There were
I actually won it though.
some
I actually did well.
of his matches actually I think were postponed or something because I couldn't find them in results, but it didn't really matter because he had E United to beat Liquid in one of their games, so
Yeah.
it was over before it started. And then you won it, as you can see here. Actually, pretty good result for you. I think you had something like 250 euros off your bet,
Yeah.
which was a pretty nice combo. And then Prof kind of almost broke even with the system bet. So that's where we're at right now. But let's get into this week's bets. Obviously, we have Epicenter playoffs coming up, which we'll also use this as kind of ways to analyze who we think are gonna make it through. I couldn't find a way to bet outright, but I wanted to put money on some
the
team
winner, right?
to win it, right? So we had to just do for tomorrow's matches, which I think are the semis, right?
Yeah.
No,
Quarters.
Quarters, yeah. Lucas, you go ahead and waste all of Prof's money.
Yeah, let's go for it. Where's let's see, I have the 2 matches, or wait, it's not popping up. There we go. Hellraisers Avantgarde, I have Hellraisers winning, and FaZe Nip, I have FaZe winning. I think they're both the favorites. So it's, I think, a pretty straightforward, like, safe bet. Not looking to get rich off of it. Obviously there can be surprises. We've been seeing surprises, lately a lot. A lot of the kind of underdogs, coming up and beating bigger teams. We saw Avantgarde beating Nip, which was maybe somewhat unexpected, but I don't know. for some reason still have faith in Hellraisers despite them losing all of my money in Star Series. That's like the first bet I lost was because I was saying like Hellraisers were gonna do really good and make the final, and they went out in groups.
Also
But I
profitability, right?
but I think they can beat Avangard, and then Nip FaZe. I just think FaZe, they're the more quality team. I mean, we've said that they're not playing that well, and then they're having issues and so on and so forth. But I don't see Nip as being like a very strong team or something either. So
especially after losing to Wahengbam, right?
yeah, exactly. So you didn't see that, and so I mean, anything can happen these days with like you're not top 3-4 teams or whatever. But I think it should go to the favorites, and I think they'll move on to the semis. And so I did my little combo there. Gonna make Prof nice $100. It'll be good.
This is what, for once you don't have your own, or you don't have your own money for this. Why would you go with the safe bet now? You have to go Joe on him, like, bet something
Oh,
crazy.
because I did that the first time, right? Oh, but I lost Striker's money.
Yeah, you lost my money.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So I made it back, don't worry about
That's when I did the YOLO bet, and so this time around I'm like, okay, I'm
it.
gonna
Well, thanks, man.
take it back a little bit.
Because you just don't want us to win, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Obviously,
He's rooting for his boy.
I have the same two matches, obviously, because those are the only ones we could really bet on. But I went a little bit more YOLO. Let's say that.
A little bit.
A little bit, because if you remember how flaccid I was looking at in the chart, then I'll have to do some jumping there.
I was waiting for some phallic references, and I got it. Nice.
You knew it had to come, right? Talking about butts and the other thing. So I have to make some more money, which is why I actually have Hellraisers to win. I also have Nip to win, beating Vanguard and FaZe respectively, just because they're favorites. But then I put 2-0 for both teams. I think the one I'm actually more the funny thing here is that the Hellraisers to beat a Vanguard 2-0 is a lower odds than the other one, but I think Hellraisers are the more dangerous bet to make, just because it's Hellraisers, right? Because they always play really close. I think they had something like 7 out of 18 overtime maps in the last 4 weeks or something. That's probably the most risky one, but just to make it a little more fun, that's what I did. So that's gonna be my way to get back up there.
I mean, I feel like those Avangard odds, even what you're showing, what your bet was, that just feels odd. That's kind of why I went the other way. I actually bet on Avangard, even though I just see the matchup as being a little bit more towards 50-50 than those odds obviously show, because the odds are 3.17 to 1.35 or something like that, which is just crazy to me based on what we've seen so far at the tournament. Sure, Vanguard got kind of blown out by Liquid, but at the same time they beat NIP, as we said, and it's not like Hellraisers have really established themselves as this strong team, so I feel like they can easily lose to Vanguard, which was the reason I picked Vanguard to win, just because I saw it maybe slightly. I would edge it to Hellraisers based on the long term. But based on this tournament alone, I feel like Vanguard have a really good shot, and that's why I picked them. And on the other side,
I just don't think 3.17 is really enough for a team that's unproven, right?
Well, I don't think it's so much about the money. I just think Avangard are too like tier 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I said, long term, I would definitely go with Hellraisers any day of the week. That's an easy decision. But it's just like feel like based on the tournament, based on what we've seen from Avangard, and actually recently they've just looked very good online as well. So I just feel like they're this team they're on the up and up, and they actually have a really good shot of taking down a team like Hellraisers, who are obviously not as stable, like top 10 or whatever, who will barely lose to these teams below their level. So that's kind of my thinking there. And in terms of Nip FaZe, I just went with the favorites, like pretty much like Lucas, have the same kind of reasoning for that. I just don't see them losing to NIP, who have just not looked very strong in these past couple of tournaments, even though they've been a little bit. I mean, they've had some good results at the major, and before that in Stockholm, but it's not like we've seen them beat teams of FaZe's stature. So that's why I would definitely pick up FaZe in this one.
That's funny, man. We just pound on them for 20 minutes and then we go bet on them at the end, right?
I mean, like we were just
Oh,
regarding
what side
FaZe,
are
we were saying
what
about
side of the bracket are they on?
their
Are they on the Liquid
outside
side
of
or?
on the other side of Navi, right? On Liquids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So so they're gonna get crushed anyway in the semis. So
Yeah,
think-
that's probably where we're headed, and
Yeah.
that was our thinking around FaZe, right? The problem is it's not like they're not a good team. They're still like a solid team. It's just not they're not a title contender, or they're not looking like one, not a stable one anyway. Like sure they're probably going to be still able to take a tournament here and there, like provided Astralis isn't there basically. But like outside of that, they're just not going to be a stable like top 2, top 3
I
team.
mean, after how they played against Navi, I don't see him taking it here either.
Yeah, exactly.
What I mean. So let's bring back Bleh. That's hard to say. For the last part of the show, which are the rest of the teams also at Epicenter. We need to try and look at who we think will win. I wanted to say Liquid, but I don't think they're gonna win. I'm not so sure.
I mean, we were talking about this every single time we talk about Liquid and
exactly.
their chances about winning an event. Like, sure, at this point, it's actually looking pretty good, but like
this is gonna be the one. This is gonna be the one.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there has to come a point where I mean, there doesn't have to come a point, but
one day you'll be right, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. One day, Liquid will actually start winning something. And that's where we're gonna bet against them, just because it's gonna be way in the future somewhere. Where
No, I
we
believe,
just, like,
I
stop
believe.
believing. You
I
believe for this
that-
one?
Yeah.
What about you,
I,
Bleh?
maybe I don't know if it's gonna be this one, but I believe that they're gonna break that curse. That they're gonna win a tournament.
No, I believe so too.
That-
They're just headed there. It's just like it's
They
a
are.
question of when, right?
They are, and because the thing is like they're young, you know, like the star players, like the three-star players, they're so young that it's just like once they break that seal, I think. Then
I mean,
they're
just
good.
look at
That's when
Astralis, right? They had the same kind of the same reputation, even though it was like more
Yeah.
like semis type
Yeah.
thing. And they look at how they've evolved from that point, right? So this I feel like is very similar, and I even think like Liquid are in a better spot than the TSM at that point, or even Dignitas, where I feel like Liquid are at this point are even better than TSM used to be around that around that
definitely.
tier
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Oh, definitely, I
Much
think
more
so as
well-rounded
well.
too. Yeah.
So
But the thing is, TSM though, they had already won, so they kind of knew what winning was.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, before they started winning, right? Before, what was it, like 2015, 2014 even?
Yeah, but they'd already won some stuff.
Well, they started winning when there was
Didn't they?
the one Cloud9 had that run as well.
Team?
That was when they were actually considered like the best team in the world. But anyway, like my point is, Liquid are actually looking better than that. Like when compared to their opponents right now or at that moment. So I feel like they're just headed towards there. It's just the question of when they're actually
Is
going
this
to
one?
break through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
When
I
when
mean-
they can actually open, break the seal.
Like
you know,
some of these
open the
finals
lid
have
when
actually
you see
been
Poppy can't
close.
stop.
So like
Oh, yeah.
if they actually got through one, maybe that's what takes them over the edge for the next one, right? Maybe that's where they're gonna realize, okay, this is not something that we should do, and things like that. And
No, they're gonna win one, and the next one they're gonna meet Astralis in the grand final, and then they're gonna
that's
lose
the problem,
again.
right? Like Liquid have had it rough, to be honest. Like they have been looking like the second, third best team for like half a year now, almost. But like they've had a fucking homunculus of an Astralis like in front of them most of the time. That's just crazy. Like they just haven't been given the best chances to win at all. Like
Oh.
it's so hard to win against Astralis right now.
but when they did get the chance, they fucking threw so hard, man. Like
Yeah.
that mouse
Look,
sports
it's-
match.
It's
like,
like
hurts,
Liquid.
yeah.
It's like
But a
Liquid
lot of the
are
time they
like this
didn't really
young
have to.
stud.
Huh?
It's like Liquid are this young stud. They got a massive, gigantic dick, and they just need to have sex once. They haven't had sex yet. They just need to get it out there. And once you lose your virginity, they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's how it's done," and they're gonna start winning shit, and they're gonna win this event.
Yeah. I mean, my thinking around the Astralis thing and how they blew it at New York is that like they haven't really gotten into situations where they can win a final much because they met Astralis in several of them in the past. It's the half a year. So like they didn't really get much of a chance in those finals most of the time. Like Astralis blew them out pretty quickly, and like 3 out of 4 of them I think they played, or 2 out of 3 I think. So that's kind of the issue, right? You don't really get to learn from those types of games where you don't even have a chance to win. So now that they actually got that one final where they should have won but didn't, against Mouse Sports in New York, like that's where they actually start making some progress at least, and that's where they can start learning about how to close these games, rather than getting on the bad end of the stick for Astralis, basically.
I like Bleh's analogy.
Yeah.
It works.
It works.
Very graphic.
So, I think we'll end it with that. But we didn't really end up with the ruling on this. Will they win this or not?
I think they're gonna win it.
Liquid?
It's just for the taking.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be between like Navi and Liquid, right?
It's gonna be a Navi Liquid final. Then Liquid gonna choke on the last map, with a 12-3 lead.
So the point is, if you rock around, you can't get laid. What you do is you go to Moscow. You find someone who's willing to do it for you.
That's a good one.
Guys,
I like that.
We can't go much further than this, I think.
No,
thanks so much for joining us, Bleh, once again. Remember to go follow him at official Bleh. I always say this when our tags are not on the screen, and it changes every minute. So I'm just gonna. If I keep talking, go ahead and follow Bleh on official Bleh, and the rest of us you can find on HLTV.org. And the VOD for this will be up. Please go watch and leave your comments in the comments, and we'll be back stronger next time. Thanks for leaving your comments in the chat. And Lucas, Milan, and Bleh, I've been Yossarian. Thanks for watching, guys.